They told these artists to quit. They buried the records, rejected the demos, laughed them out of boardrooms on Music Row, and every single one of those songs went on to define a generation. These are the 1960s country hits nobody believed in. Let's count them down. Number 10, He Stopped Loving Her Today, George Jones.
She still preyed upon mine.
Recorded 1978, released 1980.
He kept her picture.
Wait, before you say it, stay with me. Because the story of this song begins in 1965 in a recording studio in Nashville, and it involves a man who everyone in the business had quietly given up on. George Jones. By the mid-1960s, he had hits, real ones. White Lightning. She Thinks I Still Care. He was talented beyond argument, but he was also unreliable, drinking heavily.
He had underlined in red.
Disappearing from recording sessions, showing up late, or not at all. Label executives would whisper about him the way doctors whisper about a patient they've stopped fighting for. By the late 1960s, the word around Nashville was simple. George Jones is finished. His personal life was in freefall. His recording output was erratic. And the songs he was releasing, good as some of them were, weren't cutting through the noise of a changing decade.
He stopped loving her.
So why didn't the music world simply move on from him? That's the question. And the answer is stranger than any of his songs. Because even at his lowest, even when he was earning the nickname No-Show Jones for missing concert after concert, there was something in his voice that nobody else in country music had.
All dressed up to go away.
A raw, broken quality that sounded like grief had physically altered his vocal cords. And then, in 1980, drawing on everything those years of 1960s heartbreak had built inside him,
We all wondered if she would, and it kept running.
He recorded He Stopped Loving Her Today. Producer Billy Sherrill had been sitting on the song for years. Even Jones, upon first hearing the demo, reportedly said, "Nobody's gonna buy that morbid song." He was wrong. It hit number 1. It won the Country Music Association Award for Single of the Year, twice in consecutive years. Critics called it the greatest country song ever recorded. And it wasn't, despite the pain of the 1960s that shaped Jones. It was because of it. Every sleepless night on Music Row, every rejection, every bad year.
Dated 1962.
All of it poured into 3 minutes and 12 seconds that stopped the world cold. Some voices need to be broken before they can be truly heard.
Dated 19
And speaking of voices that almost never got heard, this next story starts with a handshake that almost never happened.
He had underlined in red.
Number 9, King of the Road, Roger Miller.
Buys a 8x12 4-bedroom.
1965. Roger Miller was the kind of man who made other men nervous.
third boxcar, mid.
Too funny, too smart, too different. He'd been kicking around Nashville since the late 1950s,
8x12 4-bedroom. I'm a man.
writing songs for other artists, including a little number called Billy Bayou for Jim Reeves. But his own recording career was going precisely nowhere.
I'm a man of means by no means.
By 1964, he was 30 years old, broke, and seriously considering leaving music entirely.
Means king of the road.
Smyrna, Tennessee to Nashville is about 20 miles. In Roger Miller's head, it might as well have been 20 light years.
Pushing broom buys a 8x12 4.
He pitched songs. They got politely declined. He pitched himself as an artist. Executives smiled and changed the subject.
Broom buys a 8x12 4-bedroom.
The prevailing wisdom at the time was that Roger Miller was a writer, not a performer, not a star.
Trailers for sale, rent, room.
Now here's where it gets strange. As in a moment of either inspiration or desperation, accounts differ. Miller sat down and wrote King of the Road in a single session.
But 2 hours of pushing broom.
The song was spare, almost aggressively simple. A first-person account of a drifter, a man who owned nothing and owed nothing.
Cents. No phone, no pool, no.
Living on the edges of American life. Trailer for sale or rent. Rooms to let, 50 cents.
Means by no means king of the road.
Radio programmers who heard the early demo weren't sure what to do with it. It wasn't weepy enough to be a traditional country ballad. It wasn't up-tempo enough to be a dance number. It existed in some no-man's land between folk and country, and something else that didn't have a name yet.
Ain't got no cigarettes, but 2 hours.
But then a funny thing happened. The people voted. Not with ballots, with nickels. Jukebox nickels.
2 hours of pushing broom buys a.
The song started appearing in diners and roadhouses across the South and Midwest, played on repeat by people who recognized something in it.
I'm a man of means by no means.
The freedom of it, the dignity of it. Because Miller wasn't writing about a loser.
Hours of pushing broom buys a 8x12.
He was writing about a man who had found peace with exactly what he had.
Midnight train, destination banger.
By March 1965, it was #1 on the country charts. Then it crossed over. #4 on the pop charts.
All of the children and all of their names.
Then it went international. Britain, Australia, continental Europe.
Around I sing trailers for sale or rent.
Countries where people had never set foot in a trailer park somehow understood exactly what Roger Miller was singing about.
Rooms to let, 50 cents.
It won 5 Grammy Awards in a single night, 1966. 5. For a song that nobody in Nashville had known what to do with. Not flashy, not hyped.
Got no cigarettes, but 2 hours of.
Just quietly, perfectly, permanently unforgettable. But what comes next? This one involves a bet, a broken marriage, and a night that almost ended before it started.
Man of means by no means.
#8, I Fall to Pieces. Patsy Cline, 1961. The year is 1960. Patsy Cline is 27 years old and she is furious. Not publicly furious. Patsy was too professional for that. But privately, in the way that women who know exactly how good they are channel their frustration into something productive. She was done with being told what to sing. Decca Records had been guiding her toward upbeat, bouncy numbers. Pop country crossover material. Songs with strings and sweetness and not too much edge. And Patsy Cline, who had a voice like amber and lightning combined, was singing them beautifully and hating every second. Then producers Hank Cochran and Harlan Howard brought her I Fall to Pieces. She didn't want to record it. Let that sink in. Patsy Cline didn't want to record I Fall to Pieces. She thought it was too slow, and too safe. She reportedly called it a dog, industry slang for a song that just lies there and doesn't move. Producer Owen Bradley had to talk her into it. He heard something in the architecture of the song that Patsy couldn't see yet, a kind of controlled devastation that matched her voice perfectly. So she recorded it, grudgingly. And then she went back to performing shows and recording other things, not giving the song much thought. Here's where the story takes a turn nobody scripted. In June of 1961, Patsy Cline was involved in a near-fatal car accident outside of Nashville. She was thrown through the windshield. She was hospitalized for weeks. And while she was recovering, while the country music world was holding its breath about whether she'd ever perform again, I Fall to Pieces began to climb, slowly at first, then faster. No radio stations that had been lukewarm suddenly couldn't get enough. By July of 1961, it was #1 on the country charts. And Patsy was still in a hospital bed. She never fully recovered from her injuries. She performed in a cast, in bandages, through pain that most people couldn't imagine. And there's something unbearably poignant about that. A song about falling apart, becoming a #1 hit, while the woman who sang it was literally putting herself back together. Patsy Cline died in a plane crash in March of 1963. She was 30 years old. She had been a country music star for precisely 2 years. And yet, ask any serious musician, any singer, any songwriter, which voice from the 20th century they would most want to possess. The answer comes up more than you'd think. I Fall to Pieces. She sang it like she meant it. and because she knew better than anyone exactly what that felt like. Stay with me, because the next story takes us somewhere most country music histories never go. And it starts with a soldier who wasn't supposed to come home. Number 7, Detroit City, Bobby Bare, 1963. It's 1962. A songwriter named Mel Tillis, yes, that Mel Tillis, co-writes a song with Danny Dill about the Great Migration, about the millions of Southern men who left their small towns for the factories of the industrial North.
I dreamed about that girl who's been with
Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, who went chasing wages and came back, or didn't. Fundamentally changed. The song was called Detroit City, and when it landed on Bobby Bare's recording desk,
about that girl who's been waiting for
it didn't arrive with any particular fanfare. It was just another song in the pile. Bobby Bare was a country singer from Ironton, Ohio. Close enough to Appalachia to understand exactly what the song was about. He'd been drafted into the Army, served.
but by day I
Come back. He knew what it felt like to leave a place and not entirely find your way back to who you were. Or he recorded the song simply, almost plainly.
by day I make the cars, by night
No orchestral embellishment, just a voice and a story and the weight of longing. Radio programmers were skeptical.
'cause you know
The song was long by the standards of the day. It was melancholy. It didn't have a chorus that made you want to sing along. It had no hooks in the conventional sense.
I'd put it on a southbound freight ride.
Just the slow pull of a man dreaming about home while standing in a city that didn't know his name. And then something extraordinary happened.
So I just think I'll take my foolish pride.
Veterans started requesting it, not just country music fans. Veterans, men who'd been stationed overseas.
I wanna go home.
Men who'd left rural America for military service and returned to find everything slightly off, slightly unfamiliar. They heard Detroit City and felt recognized in a way that popular music in 1963 rarely offered. The song reached number 6 on the country charts, but more significantly, it crossed demographic lines that country music almost never crossed in that era. Bobby Bare won a Grammy for Best Country and Western Recording in 1964. The Grammy.
I wanna go home.
For a song about factory workers and homesickness and the American myth of opportunity. Mel Tillis, who wrote it, later said he'd written the song in about an hour. That he almost hadn't bothered finishing it. Almost.
Detroit City. And
The distance between almost and forever is sometimes no more than one finished verse.
I dream.
But here's where I need to stop for a second. Because what's coming is the entry that surprised even me.
Mother still Papa, sister, and brother.
When I went back through the archives,
Sister and brother, I dreamed about that.
Number 6, El Paso, Marty Robbins, 1959, charted 1960.
I was in love, but in vain I could tell.
Some songs announce themselves. El Paso didn't announce anything.
Yeah, she didn't dare in a dream.
It arrived like a man walking into a bar, quiet at first, until you noticed the look in his eyes.
Love of this man, down with his hand for the gun that he.
Marty Robbins recorded it in 1959 as part of his Gunfighter Ballads and Trail Songs album.
My challenge was answered.
An entire album of Western narrative songs at a time when Nashville was trying desperately to modernize country music and leave the cowboy imagery behind.
Just for a moment I stood.
The industry consensus was clear. The Old West aesthetic was over.
Many thoughts raced through my mind as I.
It was television territory. Roy Rogers, Gene Autry, not serious recording material.
To the back door of roses I read, out where the horses were.
Columbia Records was nervous about the song specifically because of its length, 4 minutes and 37 seconds.
Back in El Paso.
In 1960, the standard radio single was 2 minutes, 30 seconds, maximum.
Out through the back door of roses I.
Program directors had an unwritten rule. You didn't play anything that long. You couldn't.
It's been so long since I've seen the young maiden.
The format didn't allow it. Columbia actually pressured Robbins to cut the song down.
Texas town of El Paso, out to the Badlands of New Mexico.
He refused. Politely, but absolutely. He said the story required every second, and cutting it would ruin it entirely.
I saddled up and away I did go, riding alone.
So here's the question. How does a 4.5-minute Western ballad on an album the label wasn't sure about,
I saddled up and away I did.
released in a format that physically couldn't accommodate it, become one of the defining songs of the era?
Tomorrow a bullet will find me. Tonight nothing's worse than this pain.
Let it breathe for a moment, because the answer says something important about where music actually lives. It lives with the people.
Paso, I can see Rose's cantina below.
Disc jockeys, individual DJs, not format programmers, started playing it on late-night shows.
Onward, down off the hill to Felina I go.
The kind of slots where the rules got a little looser and where a DJ could take a chance on a song that made him feel something.
I mounted cowboys, off to my left, right, a dozen or more.
Listeners called in. Letters arrived at radio stations. Not a trickle, a flood.
I can't let them catch me. I have to make it to Rose's back.
El Paso reached #1 on both the country and pop charts in January 1960.
Something is dreadfully wrong, for I feel a deep burning pain.
It stayed at the top of the country charts for 7 weeks, and at the 1961 Grammy Awards, it became the first country song in history to win the Grammy Award for Best Country and Western Performance. The first. Ever. For a song that was too long, too old-fashioned, and too stubborn to be cut down.
I see the white puff of smoke from the rifle. I feel the.
Marty Robbins stood in that recording booth, refused to compromise the story, and let history prove him right. If these stories are bringing back memories,
I feel the bullet go deep in my chest.
If you're hearing these songs in your head right now the way I am, go ahead and subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from, but don't go anywhere. Because what comes next rewrote the rules of what country music was even allowed to say.
Oh, that's one more song. That is one song.
Number 5, Ode to Billie Joe. Bobby Gentry, 1967. There are mystery novels that give you fewer questions than this song. Bobby Gentry was a 23-year-old woman from Chickasaw County, Mississippi. When she wrote Ode to Billie Joe in 15 minutes. 15 minutes. On a plane, or in a car, or in a dressing room, she's given different accounts over the years, which is somehow perfectly appropriate for a woman who made ambiguity into an art form.
Pass the biscuits, please.
Capitol Records almost didn't release it as a single. They buried it as the B-side. The B-side. In 1967, if your song was the B-side, it was the equivalent of being left on the cutting room floor.
And then she said, I got some new.
The song that was supposed to be the A-side got some early radio play, and then a disc jockey in an unnamed city
Was a shame about Billie Joe.
This detail has been disputed for 50 years, flipped the record over. So played the B-side by accident or by instinct, and the phones exploded.
Bone Chop Town Ridge. And that
What were callers asking? The same thing everyone asks, still, to this day. What did Billie Joe McAllister throw off the Tallahatchie Bridge?
woman, Billie Joe. Put a frog down my back at the carol.
Gentry refused to answer. Not coyly, not playfully. She genuinely refused, in interview after interview for decades.
And wasn't I talking to him after church last Sunday?
She said the mystery wasn't the point. She said the song was about the family at the table, their indifference.
You know, it don't seem right.
Their ability to discuss a young man's death in the same breath as passing the biscuits. She said she was writing about emotional disconnection in the rural South.
You know, it don't seem right.
The public didn't entirely believe her, which meant they kept listening.
Saw him at the sawmill yesterday up on Choctaw Ridge.
Ode to Billie Joe knocked the Beatles off the #1 position on the Billboard Hot 100. Read that sentence again.
Child, what's happened to your appetite?
A 23-year-old woman from Mississippi, in with a mysterious B-side, displaced the Beatles at the top of the charts.
That nice young preacher, Brother Taylor, dropped.
It stayed at #1 for 4 weeks in the summer of 1967. It was the second best-selling single in the United States for that entire year.
Well, he said he saw a girl who looked a lot like.
It earned Gentry 4 Grammy nominations. It launched a career that burned brilliantly. And then,
A year is
in one of country music's most enduring mysteries, she simply walked away.
something off the Tallahatchie Bridge.
In the late 1970s, Bobby Gentry retired from public life entirely and has not given a significant interview since. Gone.
Brother Mary Becky Thompson, they bought a store and she.
Like a figure across a bridge, disappearing into the summer heat. She wrote the most discussed 3 minutes in country music history, and then took the explanation with her.
Don't reach and drop the
Some doors, once closed, stay closed. And if you think that's a story about stubbornness, wait until you hear what happened to this next artist when the entire genre turned its back on him. Number 4. Mama Tried, Merle Haggard, 1968.
No one could change my mind, but Mama tried.
Let's be specific about where Merle Haggard was in 1960. He was in San Quentin prison.
My mama seemed to know what lay in store.
He was 23 years old, serving a sentence for burglary, and on January 13th, 1960,
Not knowing where I'm bound, no one could change my mind.
he was in the audience when Johnny Cash performed a live concert for the inmates. That concert changed his life.
And more. And I turned 21 in prison.
He's said so himself many times. By 1963, he was out. By 1965, he had a minor record deal. And by 1968, he was releasing music that the Nashville establishment found deeply, fundamentally uncomfortable. Because Merle Haggard wasn't singing about idealized versions of working-class life.
Mama tried to raise me better, but her pleading I denied.
He was singing from inside it. The dust and the failure and the pride and the stubbornness. Mama Tried was autobiographical.
Left my mom a heavy load. She tried so very hard.
The story of a boy who rejected every lesson his mother tried to teach him and ended up exactly where that path leads.
In life without parole, no one could steer me right.
It was an admission of guilt set to a shuffle beat. Some radio programmers were uneasy with it. The confessional nature. The specificity of the failure. Country music had a tradition of struggle, but struggle usually got redeemed by the end of the song.
Better, but her pleading I denied. That leaves only me.
Haggard wasn't sure redemption was always available, and he had the moral authority of a man who'd actually sat in a cell to back that up.
On a freight train leaving town, not knowing where.
But here's the pattern interrupt. Here's where the story shifts. The fans didn't want redemption.
Changed my mind, but Mama tried. The one and only.
They wanted truth. Mama Tried hit number 1 on the country charts in 1968. It became the defining song of the Bakersfield sound. A raw,
Till Mama couldn't hold me anymore.
electric guitar-driven alternative to the polished Nashville production style. And it announced Haggard as something the industry hadn't quite seen before. An outlaw before the outlaw country movement had a name.
Mama tried, Mama tried, Mama tried to raise me back.
He didn't lead a rebellion. He just told the truth. And the truth, it turned out, was a number 1 record. The CMA named him Entertainer of the Year in 1970.
So left my mom a heavy load. She tried so very
The man who was watching Johnny Cash from a prison bleacher in 1960 accepted that award 10 years later.
hard to fill his shoes. Working hours.
10 years. No footnote in country music history. He wrote chapters of it. There's a name coming up.
Doing life without parole. No one could steer me.
And I guarantee you, whatever you think you know about this next song, you don't know the whole story.
No one
could steer me right, but Mama tried. Mama tried.
Number 3, By the Time I Get to Phoenix, Glenn Campbell, 1967. Jimmy Webb was 20 years old when he wrote By the Time I Get to Phoenix. "20 years old, heartbroken over a woman who'd left him and, in the unsentimental tradition of great songwriting, he turned the pain into architecture." The song had been sitting around Nashville for 2 years before Glenn Campbell recorded it. 2 years. It had been passed on by multiple artists, including, and this detail almost defies belief, Frank Sinatra, who allegedly called it the greatest torch song ever written and then didn't record it for contractual reasons. Others simply didn't understand it. The narrative structure was unusual. A man driving across the Southwest, marking his departure in real time against the geography of the journey. By the time I get to Phoenix, she'll be rising. By the time I reach Albuquerque, she'll be working. By the time I make Oklahoma, she'll be sleeping. No climax, no confrontation, just the inexorable forward motion of a man who has decided to leave and is watching the miles prove it to him. Nashville said it was too long, too cinematic, not catchy enough, and then nobody in Nashville believed him. Nobody except the fans. Glenn Campbell released it in 1967. It won the Grammy for Best Vocal Performance, Male. It won the Grammy for Best Contemporary Solo Vocal Performance, Male. And then, in 1969, ASCAP, the American Society of Composers, Authors, and Publishers, announced that By the Time I Get to Phoenix had become the most performed song in the history of their organization. She'll find the note I left hanging on her door. The most performed in history at the time. A song that had been passed on for 2 years. It's a song nobody quite understood. When she reached the part a song that broke every radio formatting rule just as El Paso had, because it prioritized emotional truth over commercial convenience. 'Cause I've left that girl so... Jimmy Webb went on to write Wichita Lineman, Galveston, songs that together form a kind of impressionist portrait of American loneliness that no other songwriter of that era came close to capturing. And it all started with a 20-year-old sitting in heartbreak, building something out of the ruins that would outlast everyone who'd rejected it. She'll be working. 2 entries left. And I have to tell you, I almost didn't include this next one, because the story is so strange, so specific, so genuinely unexpected, that I wasn't sure anyone would believe it. Number 2, Hello Walls, Farron Young, 1961.
And I'll bet you read to spend and...
The year is 1960. A 23-year-old songwriter named Willie Nelson, yes, that Willie Nelson,
me, but only walls
who at this point in his life is largely unknown, working as a disc jockey in Fort Worth to pay the bills, writes a song in about an hour.
Company.
He tries to sell it around Nashville, gets some polite interest, nothing concrete. And then he meets Farron Young.
Since our darling disappeared.
Farron Young was a legitimate country star in 1960. Military service, movie appearances, hit records.
Darling disappeared. Well, look here.
He was also, by most accounts, a man who made decisions quickly and trusted his instincts absolutely.
Now don't you try to tell me that it's rain.
When he heard Hello Walls, he reportedly paid Nelson $500 for it on the spot and recorded it almost immediately. $500.
To get along without her if we can.
For a song that would change both their lives. Hello Walls is a masterpiece of comic heartbreak. A man so lonely after a breakup that he started talking to the furniture.
Won't you bear with me a while? We've got all.
Hello Walls. How'd things go for you today? It's absurdist. It's funny. It's devastating. Sometimes simultaneously within the same verse.
I'll lose my mind. I've got a.
Radio programmers didn't quite know how to categorize the tone. Was it a novelty song? Was it a serious heartbreak ballad?
Stick together for us.
Farron Young himself sometimes played it with a wink and sometimes played it straight. That tonal ambiguity, that refusal to be neatly categorized, should have hurt it. Instead,
Afraid to spend another lonely.
it helped it. Hello Walls hit number 1 in 1961 and stayed there for 12 weeks. 12 weeks.
Another lonely night with me.
In that era, that was nearly unheard of. It became one of the best-selling country singles of the entire decade.
That you're still here. Aren't you lonely?
And for Willie Nelson, that $500 became the foundation of a career. He used it to finance his move to Nashville.
Here. Aren't you lonely?
To keep writing, to keep pushing. He sold a masterpiece for $500 and built an empire with the seed money. There's a lesson in that, about the difference between what something is worth now and what it's worth eventually. And now,
A teardrop in the corner of your face.
the one we've been building toward. Number 1. And I'll tell you right now, this is the story that stays with you.
It went away and left us all alone.
Number 1. Always on My Mind. Willie Nelson, 1982, written 1971.
You were always on my mind.
Here is where the story comes full circle. The year is 1971. Two songwriters, Mark James and Johnny Christopher, write a song that starts as a guilt letter.
You were always on my mind.
An apology set to music. A man admitting, almost too late, that the person he loved had always been his priority.
You were always on my.
He'd just been terrible at showing it. Elvis Presley recorded it in 1972. It was decent. It charted. It was quickly forgotten in the avalanche of late-period Elvis releases.
Little things I should have said and done.
Brenda Lee recorded it. It went nowhere. The song sat in the catalog, covered but not claimed, recorded but not yet lived in. And then,
You were always
11 years after it was written. Willie Nelson, the man who had sold Hello Walls for $500,
You were always on my mind.
Nar, who had spent years being told he was too country, or too pop, or too strange for mainstream Nashville, who had recorded Red-Headed Stranger when his label thought he'd lost his mind.
That your sweet love hasn't died.
Willie Nelson picked up Always on My Mind and made it his. The 1982 recording is, by any objective measure,
Chance to keep you satisfied.
one of the most emotionally precise performances in country music history. He didn't oversing it. He didn't perform it in the theatrical sense. He simply said it. Like a man on the phone at 2 a.m., finally saying the thing he'd been avoiding for years. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Always on My Mind won the Country Music Association Award for Single of the Year in 1982.
You were always on my mind.
It won Song of the Year. It won Album of the Year for the album of the same name. 3 CMA awards in a single night.
You were always on my mind.
It crossed to the pop charts. It went international, charting across Europe, Australia, Canada. And then, 6 years later,
Always on my mind.
the Pet Shop Boys released an electronic version that introduced the song to an entirely new generation in an entirely new decade. A song written in 1971, first recorded in 1972, redefined by Willie Nelson in 1982, redefined by British synth pop in 1988.
As I should have.
Some songs don't belong to a year. They belong to a feeling, and the feeling never goes out of style.
Quite as good as I should have.
Willie Nelson, the broke disc jockey from Fort Worth, the man who sold a #1 hit for $500, the artist who spent the 1960s being shaped by every rejection and
Is on my mind.
every doubt, poured all of it into 3 minutes and 47 seconds of the most quietly devastating music country had ever heard.
I guess I never told you.
He didn't just record a song, he told his whole story. And it turned out, it was everyone's story.
I'm so happy that you're mine.